Welcome to the Women's Fitness and Health Revolution podcast. There is so much noise on the interweb these days about what women should and shouldn't be doing when it comes to their fitness and health. Not only is it all too often tied to shame and fixing our bodies, it can also be incredibly detrimental to our health and wellness overall. The Women's Fitness and Health Revolution podcast sorts through the BS and offers advice and actionable, tactile steps to support and build a better relationship to your amazing body through every stage of womanhood. It aims to break the cycle of keeping women in the dark about their extraordinary machines and revolutionize the way we move, eat, and live so that our daughters and our daughters' daughters look in the mirror and feel exactly what they are: fierce, beautiful, and capable of everything. The revolution starts here. Hello, and welcome to the Women's Fitness and Health Revolution podcast. Kinsey here, and today, we're going to do a slightly different one-off kind of episode. Today for me is a very big personal milestone. So normally I come on here and I talk about big health and fitness questions that I've heard from my clients over the last 12 plus years of working with clients in the field. Today, however, is a little bit more of a personal episode because as I'm recording this episode, it is August 12th, 2025, which for me marks my 7th year of sobriety. And in my personal journey, 7 years ago was really when a lot of the big changes around how I view things like nutrition and fitness really started to shift, because it was really only in sobriety that I started to build a relationship with myself and to value myself. There is definitely a time and place to talk about alcohol from a more scientific perspective. And just right off the bat, this is not like you need to stop drinking and here's why. I just figured that I've learned a lot that has really helped me with my mindset, whether mostly about mindset, but I'll also be kind of sneaking in some things about fitness, etc., maybe a little nutrition. I have a list written of some of the heavy hitter things that I've learned in these last 7 years of sobriety that I thought were worth sharing, that have helped me over the years. And as I read through them, I'm sure other things will pop up. But what I was going to say is that in no way is this a judgment call on other people. Some people can have a relationship with alcohol. I was not one of those people. My fiance drinks, not super often, but he can drink responsibly. A lot of my friends still drink and smoke weed. I just am not a person who can handle their substances in a way that is ladylike. AKA, I have a problem with drinking and alcohol. So that is a big part of my journey. Just a little bit of a recap on that. And I won't go too much into it today, but I was always a high bottom drunk is what they call it in the game. So from the outside, if you came to my gym, if you knew me around bars, if we were just casual friends, it probably came as a shock that I quit drinking. It didn't seem like maybe I had a problem more than others. Maybe not, but to most of my acquaintances, which were what most people were at that time, I owned a business. I showed up for that business. I was a great coach. I had people to go out with. I seemed very happy on the outside. I just presented as, I don't want to say as having it all together. I leaned into the LA young hot mess thing, but I kind of wore it as a badge of honor and as an excuse to not get some other pieces of my life together, and certainly not to take responsibility for things. The catch was, though, that on the inside, and something that I really didn't realize until I did stop drinking and started to work a pretty solid program around it, if I do say so myself, was that I did not realize I had a problem. I did not realize how broken I was. I did not realize how disconnected I was from people in my life. And I did not realize how disconnected I was with myself. I really had a lot of self-loathing. I think I shared on my birthday last year a little bit about my history. Before drinking was really something that I had to look at, I had struggled with eating disorders. So I kind of already had this track record of feeling like I wasn't enough of being at odds with my body, of always trying to figure out ways to like either fix it or make it better or disconnect from it, which is why I'm so passionate at this phase in my life with really helping people learn how to connect with and take care of their body where they are at. Bodies aren't something to fix. They're something to support, right? We get one of them, and it has been a lifelong journey that I have been in the trenches learning in real time how to really shift my relationship with my own body. And 7 years ago, if you would have asked me, I probably would have told you that I had the anorexia beat, which simply would not have been true. But I was out of touch enough that I probably really believed that. I think I, at that point in my life, was just sort of delusional about a lot of things. I didn't think, like I said, I truly had no idea I was an alcoholic, even though I was drinking every single night, quite a bit. And I didn't think anything needed to change. I didn't think that my unhappiness was my fault. I was pretty sure that I was a victim of circumstance, and that if people just walked in my shoes, they'd understand why I was the way I was. I looked at people who had success around me and blamed and compared myself and did the whole, well, if they had to deal with what I had to deal with, they wouldn't be where they are today. They're born into it. I had all these excuses for why I wasn't where I wanted to be, and I didn't even realize I wasn't where I wanted to be. Like I said, by the time I quit drinking, I was 30, and I had spent most of my 20s thinking I was partying, but really it was just that slow disconnection from who I was, what I wanted, and every year I got a little bit more hollow as a person. So 7 years ago, by the grace of whatever you choose to believe in, the universe, whatever, I stopped drinking with the help of AA and a lot of support from my family, just really sticking out, and friends. So I'm super stinking grateful. Within that time, I feel like I've sort of gotten a re-education in how to be a human, a re-education in how to connect with people. Like I said, I was pretty disconnected. I was always a good coach, so I did a fairly decent job of listening, but I think I still made a lot of it about me. A lot of it was very jokey, right? I never really made connections deeper than ribbing people. They still got results, but I was missing what I love so much today, which is being able to really hold space for clients for life outside of the gym. And I, for the first time, realized that there was a different way to feel than the way I was feeling every day, which was pretty darn anxious, pretty darn lonely, and just really afraid of a lot of things. So in the last 7 years, I've learned big lessons from how to treat my body, how to exercise, how to support it nutritionally, and a lot of lessons around mindset and perspective that come into play for pretty much every facet of my life. Because it turns out that when you work on one thing, those tools are really transferable to other things. So today, rather than go into big detail, I'm just going to give a little list of some of the things that I jotted down that were on my mind when I was thinking about how far life has come. I'll say too that one of the best changes just right off the bat is what I thought I wanted and what I have are very different. And what I have is better than I ever could have dreamt of. I moved to LA to act. I wanted to be famous. I wanted all the money, all the flashy things, the recognition, the da-da-da. And what I have now is a very peaceful life with the man I love more than anything, living close to my family, who I get along with and can show up for, a deep connection with friends, both old who stuck around when I was in the throes of it, and I get a real connection with now, and new who I get to establish real relationships with. I have a job that I am deeply passionate about, and I have the wherewithal and space to show up in a way where I can actually, like I said, hold space for clients and help them transform, not just physically, but also on that mental and emotional side of things. I have 2 dogs who I love, both crazy. And like I said, it's not big, it's not flashy, and yet I have more fulfillment in my life today than I ever thought was possible. So let's jump in to a little list of things. Like I said, I have a bunch written down and then some will probably pop up. Okay. I am responsible for my own happiness and boundaries. Responsibility is going to pop up a lot, and so is perspective, because a lot of what I've learned in these past 7 years has had to do with I spend a lot of time putting the onus on external things when the truth of the matter is it's an internal job, right? So this can be transferred to fitness. I can look at all the reasons around me that I quote unquote can't make it into the studio, but at the end of the day, I'm the one responsible to getting into the studio. I'm the one responsible for setting boundaries. I have no control how other people respond or behave. I have to ask for what I want. People aren't going to read my mind, and no one is going to save me. A lot of times, things go differently than I want, and they end up working out better than I ever could have hoped. Growth happens in our darkest moments. So there have been plenty of times in this last 7 years where something has felt super scary, maybe even bleak, not at all what I wanted, like a really big unknown, and getting to look back on it a couple of years out, that was the catalyst for some of the biggest, best changes that have happened in life. And I just had to sort of buckle up, ask for help where I could, and just take one step at a time. This is another really big one that I learned pretty early on that made a big difference. Life doesn't go well all the time, and that doesn't mean it's a bad life. We absolutely live in a world where there are going to be ups and downs. We get to choose how much focus each of them get. So if we go into all of our ups expecting another down, looking for that shoe to drop, it's gonna, and we'll continue to just build that expectation that the shoe is always going to drop. Or we can go into those ups with an understanding that life has balance so that we really enjoy those ups, right? So anytime that we have those lows, I really think of them as highlights for the highs. And if life's kind of like that EKG waviness, the sweet spot is right in the middle. Just like I said, aiming for that more peaceful, like, yep, storm's going to come and then it's going to pass. Great things are going to come and then they're going to pass. And in the middle of it all, we just get to sort of be there and experience life at life's terms. I have learned, whether it's relationships or coworkers or clients, that I work better with others when I pause before I react and when I actually listen to what they're saying. I've gotten, well, one of the things that I'm still working on is trying not to change other people's minds, because again, I'm not in control of what they think. I can share information, but if I'm not listening to what they're saying, then I don't know how to respond in a way that's going to be of value. Also, if I pause before I react, especially in like a relationship, let's say if something's getting kind of heated, when I was in my early 20s, I would have just jumped on them, right? I would have put on the boxing gloves and we're off to the races. And now I can avoid a lot of pain and discomfort if I just pause before I let my mouth move. I just pause. Maybe I go take a walk. Maybe it's just a couple seconds. But if I can just shut my mouth before that reaction comes out, generally there's a little bit more gentleness on the side and we can shift over to the actual communication part of it. Slowing down can create space. This one blew my mind. So a friend of mine who I work with was like, dang, for someone who is as high energy as you sure meditate a lot. And I do not meditate a lot, for the record. I just meditate daily for like 5 to 15 minutes, sometimes a couple times a day, but like usually just once. But even that, I remember when I first was thinking about getting started in meditation, I was like, oh my God, I will never be able to fit this in. And then something happened when I just started showing up, like I said, giving myself permission for 5 minutes to be enough. When I was starting to take that space, whether it was just because I was interrupting sort of the go, go, go buzzy brain, or because who knows, for whatever reason, when I let myself get quiet, I feel like I have more space on the other side. When I take time to be present, like if something pops up in my day and I'm like, I didn't plan for this, I need to get to that next thing on my to-do list, I can head into it feeling really frustrated and kind of resentful that like I had the way that my day was supposed to go and now this is in the way and I'm not going to be able to do it. And now I have all this unnecessary stress that's just probably pouring out to my loved ones, just bringing down the room. Or I slow down and I deal with what popped up and then I move on. And generally when I approach it that way, there really hasn't been that much time lost in the meantime. Or I lose a little bit of Netflix time at the end of the day, right? It's never as big a deal as I think it is. I, and most humans I'd like to argue, create a lot, I would say like most of the unhappiness and issues in my life. You've heard the whole making a mountain out of a molehill. And it's true. Humans, we have a tendency to sort of fixate on the negative. I think there's some crazy stat where it's like 2 to 10% of each day is a negative. The rest is positive, but humans will percolate on that one thing that went wrong. And suddenly this conversation I had yesterday where I could have said something better and I didn't, I'm still thinking about 3 weeks later and it's wasted my time, my energy, and I'm feeling unhappy and maybe a little resentful. Jealousy and comparison are human and I will feel them, but I do not have to let them dictate how I show up in the world. Whether it's trying to make myself feel better by asking like, whatever, by like trying to get validation externally, or if it's like going and gossiping to a friend, like those things don't have to happen. I can just be like, yeah, I'm jealous. I'm a human. It makes sense. And then take that pause and not react. They're probably not going to go away, but I don't have to let them rule the things I'm doing. And that's really important too when we're getting into fitness goals, right? There's that difference between jealousy and motivation, comparison and motivation. So really being honest with ourselves where we're like, for example, following an account because it makes us excited to move our bodies and take care of ourselves, or we're following an account because every time that we look at this account, we can compare ourselves and see how far short we're falling of so-and-so. We do not know what's going on in anyone else's life. We do not know just from like a physiological point, what their blood work is like. We do not know how their anxiety and depression is. We do not know how their relationships are. We do not know anything, right? So compare and despair is something that I am working on letting go every single day, and it's super normal. Also that, don't judge yourself. But when we can bring awareness to something, we can slowly start to let it go. When I am feeling bad, turning outwards and being of service always makes me feel better. And this one I don't believe until I do it. Every single time I'm like, it's not really going to feel better. And then I do it and I feel better. And being of service can be anything from doing the dishes and not saying anything about it, just taking care of the kitchen. It could be reaching out to a friend. It could be calling your mom. Just anything that takes the focus off of myself makes me feel immediately better. This is a big one too for everything. Where attention goes, energy flows. So again, that perspective piece, where I'm deciding to focus on, that's what's going to happen. So if all I'm focusing on is the progress I'm not making, that's all I'm going to see. Even if all these other little pieces are falling into place. Maybe my energy's better. I'm sleeping better. I'm digesting better. But I haven't seen the scale move, so it's a throwaway, right? Versus if instead of focusing on a scale, I start feeling energetic. I start feeling better in my clothes. I start feeling stronger in the gym. I start feeling happier in life. You know, these are big wins. And that's outside of everything. Like that perspective is about everything. For example, if I'm feeling broke and I keep thinking about how broke I am, I'm only going to see all the ways. I'm going to see how expensive everything is. I'm going to open up my bank account and panic. I'm going to get a bill in the mail and not open it. Versus if I decide to practice abundance, I am going to be grateful that I have money to buy things. I'm going to open up my bank account and be happy I have anything in there. I'm going to open my bill and pay for it because it builds integrity when I am able to support myself. So life, really that perspective shift can be applied to anything. It's actually kind of a fun game. Even when I'm like pissed off, it's a fun game to do and eventually it even will like help shift. Okay, gratitude, not just a buzzword. I mean, it's used as a buzzword, but when put into practice, it is real. And when it is put into that practice, it is powerful. And if we're going back up to where attention flows, gratitude is a great way of shifting your perspective, whether it's a gratitude list in the morning, whether it's saying thank you to yourself under your breath when something crappy happens. Someone was sharing the other day that every time they get a red light or someone cuts them off, instead of flipping them off, they say thank you. Just shifting the way we respond. Oh, this has been lovely. Accepting that I don't have all the answers. That one really takes a load off. Even if I know a lot about something, I don't have all the answers. Not even close. There's one later, but I'm just going to spoil it now. The more you learn, the less you know, right? I truly don't think it is possible for a human person to know everything. Even if they study that field their entire life, just by the nature of infinity, they will never know everything about what they are studying. So that's a great thing. That's a great, great thing. I don't have to be perfect all the time. Progress, not perfection. That's a big one too. That is sort of the whole point of, I believe it was last week's podcast. Wow, that was actually kind of perfect. When we were talking about all or nothing, shifting to all or something thinking. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? Don't let good enough or perfection be the enemy of good enough. This one is really big, and especially if you struggle with anxiety and depression or are a fellow future tripper like myself, it is always very helpful to remember that life is happening in the present. I had an older friend, I'm talking like 84 once, look me in the face and he said, Kinsey, you're future tripping. If you got 1 foot in yesterday and 1 foot in tomorrow, you're pissing on today. And I will always see his face saying it, because then he laughed at me and I was really mad. And then I started laughing because he said pissing on today and I'm an 8-year-old. So it's true though. If we're so busy worrying about things that have happened or worrying about things that are going to come, we're literally missing out on life, because life only happens in one moment, and that is right now. So a couple things that I do to bring myself back to the present. So anytime that I'm feeling really anxious or really afraid, because those things crop up a lot for me still, a couple of like quick things that I've found have been helpful. Taking a couple of deep breaths, like literally just taking full breaths, like 5 to 10 of them. It's enough just to sort of shift. And also generally when we're stressed, we're not really breathing, right? Another helpful one can literally be looking at my feet so that I see where I'm standing. Another really helpful one that I haven't used in a while, but I just thought of that I used to use early on in sobriety, is just naming things I see. That's a tree. That's a crack in the sidewalk. That's a cute little dog. That's my neighbor. Just naming things that bring you back to the present. And these are the things where like you hear them and you're like, man, that really is kind of boring and there's no way. But it is kind of boring unless you make it fun. And it works. It really works. We're literally rewiring our brain. Okay. My body does not determine my value. And that is something that I am continually learning. It's kind of one of those relearns, but that there is so much peace. Like I said, when I got sober early on in my fitness career, everything I did was to change my body. Now everything I do is to support my body. What I eat, because I eat now. How I move, how I rest, because I rest now, is all coming from a place of support to my body, knowing that if I don't have a healthy body and a healthy mind, I'm not going to have much. I can't really do anything else that I've mentioned if I'm not taking care of my vessel, right? This one has been really big in really this year. It's cropped up in the last 1.5 years. Sleep and stress management are some of the most important things we can prioritize, especially going into perimenopause, because it just creates crazy systemic inflammation. I did do an episode on the hierarchy of women's health. Take a listen to that if you want to deep dive into it, but I cannot stress enough. You can be doing quote unquote all of the right things, hitting your protein, working 3 to 4 times a week on strength training, walking more, hydrating, doing all the things. And if you are not sleeping, it is not going to matter much. If you are not managing your stress, or at least starting to like acknowledge where stress is cropping up from, you are still going to struggle, whether that is like just physically not seeing a difference in body comp outcome, or even more, leading to things like chronic illness, whether that's heart disease, cancer, all the things that literally get affected on a cellular level. Okay. Like I said, these are kind of all over the place. Welcome to my brain. This is a fun one that really helped me outside. Well, you know what? It also helped me in my profession as well, working with clients. Other people need to mess up in order to learn. I was a big fixer. I wanted to try to prevent everyone from messing up so that they didn't have to feel uncomfortable. And the truth is, a lot of us need to screw the pooch in order to learn what not to do. Sometimes we can hear from others and be like, great, thank you for saving me the time. And sometimes we need to experience that discomfort for ourselves to either motivate ourselves to make that change or to fully be convinced that we need to choose something else. And that was a big one, especially with my clients. Obviously, I'm not going to go out of my way to have them get injured, but sometimes they need to experience what choosing to stay up late to Netflix or work versus getting a full night of sleep is. I can talk about how important sleep is all day long, but until someone really feels how their body starts to deteriorate when they're not sleeping, that might just be what they need. For me, for this topic, there were definitely people in my life who knew me the best who said that I should examine my drinking, and I just could not hear it until I hit my emotional rock bottom and just needed things to change. So accept that others need to mess up to learn. And I didn't write this one down, but I do think, especially for women, we have a tendency to fall into the caretaking role. We also get permission. I'm going to try to think of I'm just going to say it harshly. We also get permission to cut people off, right? So there's this fine line between letting others go through life, experience things, and then grow from them, and supporting them while they continue to do the same thing over and over and not making any modicum of change or trying to find any inch of self-awareness, right? It's not our job to play the savior role. And if somebody is continually taking advantage of us or whatever the case may be, it is okay, or not treating us well, right? If it's a relationship thing and their thing that they keep messing up on is that they are speaking mean to you, they're putting hands on you, whatever the case is, you have full permission to not let them get away with an excuse, right? We have to put our oxygen mask on first, and that is a big act of courage in those situations. So again, obviously everything is nuanced, but in a situation of your kid needs to learn things for themselves. Your partner needs to learn things from themselves in a healthy way. Our friends, our coworkers, our clients, etc. Okay. When I stay mad at someone or something, or an institution, etc., when I stay mad, it is only hurting me. A lot of times they don't care. A lot of times the things that I stay mad at don't even know I exist. And I don't get my what fors. Gossiping about it doesn't make me feel better. It only makes me feel worse, right? Gossip is, she talk about it in Mean Girls? Sucking the poison out. Gossip is kind of poison, right? I don't think I have this written down, but one thing that I heard early on is that people who gossip are bored with their own lives or don't have anything interesting to say about themselves. And while I think that's a little bit of a hard take, I do think gossiping is an easy out on connection. I think it takes a lot more courage and a lot more, what's the word that I'm looking for? A lot more integrity to shut it down when people are talking snap behind people's back. And let's be honest, it might give that temporary hit of feel good. I will be honest, have I been perfect about not gossiping in these 7 years? Absolutely not. It is cathartic, and you do build a connection with the people you're gossiping with to a certain degree. However, it feels a lot better to not talk smack about someone. And if you are mad at someone, when I'm mad at someone, there are healthier tools for me to use to either let it go, to ask for something I need, to set a firm boundary, but it needs an action, right? Just sitting in the anger only poisons me. They don't care. Okay. This kind of ties in. If I don't act, nothing changes, right? So what is it? Insanity is the definition of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting it to change. It is crazy how much of my discomfort pre-sobriety and even like to this day comes from maybe being afraid to ask for something I need, or really just wishing someone could read my mind, or just all the things, right? Like if I don't make the choice to change something, the likelihood of it changing is going to be very small to nil. This is my favorite, and I mentioned it on a podcast recently. Courage truly is not the absence of fear. It is being afraid and doing it anyway. That's a big one. People, oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't realize I wrote this. This is like a little Kinsey one. People don't leave you just because you're sad. Like I said, before I quit drinking, I really, really like deep down in my marrow believed that if I was not happy all of the time, people would leave, right? I have done work around this. This is not the podcast to go into it, but I just had this deep, deep belief that it was not okay to feel things. And man, that is a gnarly place to be. Because I'm human, I'm going to feel things. So to have shame pop up every time I feel a thing, and B, it's so lonely to feel like you're not allowed. And the funny thing is, like looking back, not funny, but looking back, no, maybe there were a couple there were definitely a couple toxic situations where it was unsafe to have an emotion. But a lot of my dearest friends who I am really much closer to now in sobriety, who were with me while I was drinking, they would have listened. You know, they were fine with me I've since had plenty of emotions, and it's not that they are just fine with it. They show up. I don't have to experience pain alone anymore. If I'm going through something hard, even if it's something that I see as like not a big deal, they show up for me. And now that I do that, people come to me with things. I've sort of been able to create this expectation that like, yeah, it's okay to feel things. And that's what friends are for. We support each other through highs and lows. And we already talked about how big a high is and how life is just a compilation of highs and lows. So if you're like that, and I feel like maybe a lot of us are, vulnerability really is the key to happiness. Not with everyone. Again, like, you know, you're safe people, you know, you're not safe people. And if somebody is not a safe person to be vulnerable with, that's okay. But find yourself a pod of at least one other person that you can really show up with as yourself, and something pretty miraculous changes. Even if it just starts off as like a therapist, that's a great way just to start bringing someone into your pod where you are in a safe space to be fully you. Okay. Doing a little, we already kind of talked about this, is a whole lot more than doing nothing. So again, that all or something thinking. Resentments fester like wounds. So again, when I got sober, one thing that I realized was that a lot of just the pain that I felt in day to day, and a lot of the old beliefs that I had, just a lot of the negative, the stinking thinking, as it were resentments that had cropped up decades ago. They were just things that I had held on to and clung to and wore as a badge and spun into these little ideas. And it's really it goes back to it being easier to put the blame on someone else a lot of the time than to go inside and figure out how you can get yourself out of this situation. Not that we have to like pull ourselves up by our bootstrap and like we have to do it all by ourselves, but a lot of times I would say, like, for my own journey, 90% of the things that I thought were causing me harm were things that I had control over. There's always going to be, like, there were definitely people who were not kind in situations that were dangerous, that were outside of my control. However, the majority of them were things that I had control over. That's pretty significant when it comes to feeling some kind of way the majority of your life. So when I started to peel those back, when I started to see my parts in those, man, oh man, life started to get a little bit easier, because if I was feeling really uncomfortable for some reason, and then I could tap in and be like, oh, that's jealousy, I could name it. It's kind of like Voldemort, right? Once you say its name, it loses a little bit of its power. And then as you start to see it crop up, you get to establish patterns. Then you get to figure out like, okay, if I'm feeling jealous, like what's the opposite of jealousy? Boom, being of service. Boom, gratitude. Boom, abundance. And then you can start to slowly, step by step, try to choose actions that break you out of that. And sometimes you just sit and feel jealous and you call your sister and you cry a little and then you feel better because you cried. And then you move on. Okay. People aren't going to change just because we want them to, even if we think they're better off for it. And that is a tricky one, especially when it comes to health and fitness. I've been in this field long enough that people who have never thought they would work out, who never thought they'd get quote unquote healthy or make changes that like supported themselves, like working out or paying attention to nutritional choices, they're starting to feel the amazing benefits of taking care of themselves. Like I said, maybe it's sleeping better. Maybe their energy is better. Maybe they're feeling super confident. Maybe they're taking stairs and not getting breathless. Maybe they're being able to show up for hard conversations because they've just started becoming more grounded in themselves or working on things outside. Whatever the case is, they are feeling really excited about the way that they're feeling. Maybe their biomarkers have gotten better. They've experienced this amazing energetic change and health outcome that comes when we take care of ourselves. And so, of course, they see the people in their lives who would benefit from it. And they want so badly to get them to, let's just use working out. They want so badly to get their husband to start working out with them. And he just has no interest. And that can be a really hard place to be, especially when you know that on the other side is health. Especially when you know on the other side is mental health, physical health, especially when you have someone who is maybe has a chronic illness or is pre-diabetic, or you know they have something that if they could just even start moving their body a little bit more, they would benefit from, and they say no. And we just can't change their mind. That's just not our place. It has to come from them. But what we can do in those situations is continue to be a living example of how good the outcome is. So we might not be able to convince our husband, let's say, to come work out with us, but our husband probably knows us better than anyone. So if he starts seeing you totally shift your energy, maybe even your body comp is changing, your sleep is getting better, you're happier, you're doing more things, you're going out with friends, your life is morphing into this really wonderful, enviable ball of living, eventually, maybe, just maybe, they're going to look at it and go, man, okay, maybe I got to do that. Maybe not. That's kind of the whole thing with drinking too, that can be kind of tricky, is you might see someone and be like, man, if they would just stop drinking, everything would be better for them. And you can't convince a person to do something they're not ready to do. And one of the hardest parts is understanding and letting go of the fact that there are some people who just won't start working out. There are some people who just won't get sober. And in those moments, while also practicing being a living example, instead of feeling that heartbreak, I try to turn it around as gratitude that I was lucky enough to find it in this lifetime. So that's one thing to practice, because I do know it is so heartbreaking. I would argue most of my friends are not in the health and fitness world. And, there's just the whole premise of my business is to help women age vitally, to offset chronic illness, offset heart disease, offset dementia, offset type 2 diabetes. And we're all entering into our 40s pretty soon. And I'm just sitting here like, okay, anytime you want to get started, the sooner the better. And I just sort of have to sit on my hands. They know I'm here. When they have questions, they'll ask. If they want my help, they know where to find me. All I can do is continue to show up for myself and to be available if they have questions. Okay. We have no idea what another person is going through. That's a pretty big one, again, for everything. It's a good one, too, if you find yourself kind of quick to anger or annoyance. This is a fun game to play when you get cut off in traffic. So all my LA people, although it happens all the time in Minnesota, too. But playing the game of, like, my sister actually told me about this. She's like, well, okay, she had a different theory, which is fun. But I try to be like, maybe someone is pregnant and they're on their way to the emergency room. They're giving birth right now. Or maybe they just got a call that their partner got hit by a car, so they're racing to get somewhere. But basically, instead of being like, what a joke, I'm like, okay, they're rushing somewhere because something's going on that's important, more important than what I'm going to. Just shifting that perspective. We're already going to decide that they're a butthole. We might as well decide something more positive. Or just let it go because we don't know what's going on. And festering over traffic is something that I do a lot, and it sure doesn't make you feel better. My sister has this very cute visual she uses because she is currently living on the opposite side of the city from her studio. If you're in the Twin Cities, she is an incredible body worker. I think she closed her practice to new clients, but if you can fit it in, truly just the best body worker I've ever been to, and I've been to a lot. But she has a very long way to go, and there's a lot of construction these days in the Twin Cities. So she likes to play a game where she imagines like she's in Mario Kart and they're all on the same team in this version. And she's like, whenever someone cuts me off or blasts past me, instead of getting mad, I just get grateful that someone on my team is winning. And I'm like, you know what? You're a better person than me, but I love that. So whatever works for you, right? Just letting go of trying to guess what's in someone else's mind. That's another big thing. Mind reading is a sneaky thing, especially dealing with codependent tendencies is another something that I've come up against in my journey, and trying to mind read was a big part of that. And it's so frustrating. And also, guess what? It's none of my business. Part of being a good coach and part of being a good client or trainer coach or partner. There we go. Coach, partner, daughter, whatever, is trusting that I've created a space that's safe enough that if somebody needs something or if something needs to change, that person across from me feels comfortable asking for it. So it's not my job to try to read their mind. It's not my job to try to decide what they need or guess their next step. It's to trust that if they need something, they will let me know if something needs to shift. And with clients, obviously, I do a lot of check-ins because when we're learning movement, for example, someone new to movement, I'll ask like, how's this feeling? A lot of the time I'll get like, I don't know. Or like, where am I feeling this? I don't know, which is fine. We're learning it for the first time. So that's kind of a different scenario. But point is, outside of life, trusting that they will let me know if they need something. Okay, we're almost done. This one's good. It's okay to be boring most of the time. It's okay to be boring most of the time. Much like feeling like I had to be happy all the time, I was like, man, especially with like partners or clients, if we're not just like laughing the whole time, if we're not at a 10 the whole time, then it's gonna suck. And A, that's exhausting for you and for them, for me and for them. B, it's just not the case. Like I said earlier on, when we've got those ups and downs in life, that sweet spot, that like day-to-day, that normalcy, that's the pocket where that peace is, right? So another big thing is in LA, it was really easy to fall into the excitement of drama, right? Like, and that's kind of what gossip is too. Like, it's very easy to just, and of course, we're humans. We have big reactions. It's exciting to feel things. And also, it's healthy to have a fairly boring life. When we talk about habit changing, if you're feeling bored, you're probably doing it right? Because you're showing up doing the same things over and over. 3 times a week, I show up and I strength train. I cook meals and I get bored cooking meals. I aim for protein goals, and honestly at this point it's kind of boring because a lot of them are the same. But the thing is that means we're doing the consistency right. So that's one of my favorite phrases. If you're bored, you're probably doing it right. And then when things are exciting or depressing, we have that energy because we were just allowing ourselves to be in that baseline. Clear communication is a great way to avoid future drama. It kind of encapsulates other things that we've been talking about, but just being able to ask for our boundaries, setting up communication before we're in a heated place. So whether that's with your partner, with a family member, if there's someone that you butt heads with at work, finding time to get, when nobody is in like an elevated state, to sort of talk about communication that could be changed. Also, this goes into like the mind reading piece. A lot of my discomfort early on also came from ambiguity. So I didn't really have a clear idea of even what I wanted. So I didn't know how to ask for it. I just knew that I wasn't happy with it. And that's kind of a very uncomfortable place to be for everyone. Okay. The more I learned, the less I know we talked about. On top of that is I will never be done learning. The first year I got sober, I was like, oh my God, I've got this figured out. I am a guru. I have reached enlightenment. I am great. And then Marcus and I started dating and I was like, oh my God, I'm jealous all the time. I was like, great. Okay. Perfect. That's just life, right? Life will always throw curveballs your way. Things will happen that you've never dealt with before. Big things, little things. Like I said, even within our field, I'm a big advocate, as you know, if we're taking it back to health and fitness, if you're not with a trainer who is continually keeping up to date on new research, who is continually working on continuing education, who is open to learning, who treats you as an individual and not just as a cookie cutter, get out of there. Get out of there. The best coach knows that they know nothing. Maybe a little, but we have a lot more to learn than we know. And then the last one, get your pen out. Dogs are the best, and they will make life better. I'm pretty sure that one goes without explanation. And I'll throw cats in there too. I'm a big cat fan. Dogs and cats are the best. It is a wonderful journey to take home a fur baby. What does that have to do with anything? Well, it adds gentleness. It adds step count. And most importantly, it adds unconditional love. And sometimes that can be the best medicine we're looking for. Okay, team. Like I said, that was a bunch of just little nuggets of things that have really cropped up and help me personally just shift the way that I see the world in these last 7 years. And I'll tell you what, like I said, nowhere near what I thought I'd be doing coming up on 40. And yet so much better than anything I could have imagined. Living that day-to-day good. So super duper grateful. I'm super duper grateful for this podcast. Just a lot of gratitudes on my list on this day. And I thank you, as always, for showing up. Next week, we'll be back with a little bit more of a traditional version of the pod. In the meantime, you know the deal. Hit me up, DM at kinsey.does.the.fitness or email me at kinsey@fitafter40.info, especially if there are some things that maybe came up for you listening to this, or maybe there are some different life lessons or perspective shifts you've learned that you'd like to share. As always, that's another one that didn't make it on there. Our best teachers are each other. We don't learn in a vacuum. We don't evolve in a vacuum. We evolve together. And the majority of the best lessons that I've gotten in these last 7 years have come from listening to others and following in their footsteps. So thank you for showing up for your body. As always, if you loved the podcast or love it in general, 5-star review is a beautiful thing. Leave a review at the bottom. It means so much. I do read them all. If you didn't love the podcast, don't leave a review. Just find another podcast. There's tons out there, and that's wonderful. Variety is the spice of life. All right, team. Until next time, take care of your beautiful bodies and your beautiful minds, because you are so stinking worth it. Until next time. Aroo!